Hi, everybody. It's me, Joseph Carabas again. Surprise. And yes, the little Zoom lady is on top of things. We're listening to a collection of classic rock hits of the 60s and 70s, because that's when music knew what it was, by God. We're just listening to Mongo Jerry. If you haven't heard Mongo Jerry's in the Summertime, classic cruising song. Today I wanted to talk about pitching, an aspect of marketing, yes, pitching, but not pitching your story to an agent or a publisher, pitching yourself to a bookstore for a signing, for an event, to a con, take your pick. The reason I want to talk about it is because, blah, I'm doing it right now. And also because I took a class in it. Actually, I've taken several classes in it. And as often is the case when I take classes from a variety of sources, there are things which each different class suggests which no one else does, and they're standouts. So like, wow, that's a good idea. Okay, put those in. There are things which everybody suggests. Okay, put those in. And then there's stuff which you just plain dear God wouldn't do unless there was a gun at your head and a knife in your back, and maybe even not then. I'm going to make a strong suggestion to you. You may want to investigate those, because whatever you don't want to do, in my case, I recognize that's a weakness in myself. I need to find out, how come I don't want to do that? Is that just something that goes against my nature? For example, I need you to pay money for me to do this. That's an interesting one that's given me a lot of challenge, because I'm not one by nature to put a price tag on what I do. I know if you've been to my site, you're cracking up. You're like, really, Joseph? You put a price tag on every freaking thing you have and do. Yes, I know. I've gotten over it. I got better. But the case is, for a long time, I had trouble putting a price tag on myself, my abilities, my skills, my knowledge, my experience. And at a certain point, I said, no, I worked really hard to get this, so I'm going to do it. Getting back to actually asking for money, there's an interesting thing. If you can't ask for it, you'll never get it. That's something I did learn. If you just assume the other person is going to be gracious and generous and pay you for the good nature you've done them, screw that. People don't. The rare person might, but normally they don't. Most people. So don't do that. Ask for money if you want it. The thing about pitching yourself to a con or a show, a podcast, whatever, unless you're a known commodity, they're not going to pay you. Unless you can parlay your expertise over here to being on the show and promote your books. Well, anyway. So there are things which everybody thinks is useful. And I have to work really hard to get those things in. For example, one of the things is explain who you are. Well, don't they know? And I used to just say, here's my bio on LinkedIn, and nobody clicked. So that was not a good thing. Surprise. 1 or 2 line bio. For me, that's very tough. I actually hired somebody to come up with a variety of, 50-word, basically 2-sentence, 100-word, 300-word, full-page bios on me. And they did. A little bit of massaging. They were in my tone and in my voice. Good stuff. I'm going to lower the music here for a second, because I don't want to get, yelled at for copyright violation. So a brief bio, something that tells them very concisely who you are, why you should be at their con, on their podcast, their videocast, in their bookstore. Well, it's because I'm an author and I have a lot of books out. No, that's wonderful, yeah. And if you have more books, there's more opportunity for them to sell, of course, but that doesn't actually cut it either. What is there about you in your books which is a standout? Why you rather than that person? Why you rather than me? Don't you cut? No, I'm just kidding. If they choose you over me, good for you. Could you tell me how you did it? Because I'm curious, so I can, go me instead of you, or we can do it together. Hey. So when you tell them about yourself, concise, what makes you special? Why would they want to have you in the store? Can you tie it to a cultural event? Can you tie it to a time of year? Can you tie it to something that's going on which would bring people into the store or to the con or cause them to listen to the podcast? I'm reading notes. You also need to explain why you're reaching out to them now. In my case, it's because I've never done it before. Actually, pre-COVID, a long time ago, at this point, I actually actively solicited book signings and events in bookstores. And I found them to be a universally unsatisfying experience. Some of the bookstores did not promote it. They just, they put a small sign, if they even remembered to have a sign. They didn't spell my name correctly, didn't have the titles to my books, had the wrong time, the wrong day. Not a good experience. These are all things you need to be on top of. If a bookstore or a podcast or whatever says, yeah, geez, we'd love to have you on, hook it directly to who you are. Make sure you do your background checks. Let me see the graphic you guys are going to use to promote this. I'm going to make changes, suggestions, whatever. Have a nice professional picture of yourself for them to use. Not the last time you were on a party boat, but something that actually is you in a venue that you like, in a venue that brings out the best in you. Again, have a professional photographer. I did. It was worthwhile. I've already talked about giving them something about your experience, your identity. If you can list topics you're going to talk about, or you have the ability to talk about, that's a big plus. If you can tie that subject matter to your books, that's even better. For example, one of the things I very often am asked to actually talk about when I do signings, etc., or do a podcast, is using your own experiences to add color and flavor to your books. I do that a lot. I've never tried to hide the fact that I write autobiography. It just comes out as science fiction, fantasy, horror. My sister says that we grew up in the same house. In all fairness, she is one of my biggest fans. And she's not extra much. She's about 5'4", but one of my biggest fans. But if you can tie what you're talking about to your books, that brings people into the event and sells books, which if it's a bookstore, a con, whatever they like, podcast, right for you. So there's all of that. I very often will write about recovery from trauma, because I am a trauma survivor. If you didn't know that, you've just not been paying attention. But I do talk about that a lot. I talk about write your history, write your history, heal yourself. How journaling and putting that journaling into a fiction story or a nonfiction story, is something that would be useful both to you and to others sharing your story. People love to know there's others in the same plight they're in. Go for it. So that, do provide links to your website. You got to be careful with this next one. If you're going to provide links to your book and you're promoting yourself to bookstores, don't put in Amazon links. Put in Ingram or Lulu or anybody but Amazon, because bookstores, especially indie bookstores, are in direct competition with Amazon for reasons that I don't really quite fathom, because a bookstore could get a business account and then drive sales to Amazon if they don't buy in the store and get a commission from Amazon. But I don't know bookstore, so there you go. So that's the thing. If you're going to do to a con or a podcast, yeah, put the links into Amazon. If not, put the links into somebody else. Make it personal. Include a headshot. I've talked about that. If you have any prior experience, like in my case, I was very often in demand in business and science venues, conventions and stuff. So you have the experience, mention that. In my case, I'm also the host, moderator, and creator of the Roundtable 360s, which, if you don't know, and there's a link in the post, deal with how creatives are dealing with both their creativity and the modern world, and how they blend and how they don't at times. So that's a useful thing to put in. Show them you have a life beyond your books. It all comes down to marketing yourself, which for me is one of the greatest challenges. To finish, let me say, when talking about myself, if I do have to talk about myself, I tend to be verbose. I bet you couldn't tell. And what I need to do is, after I've written it once, put it aside and edit the crap out of it. For example, I said 1 line, 2 line bio, 50 words or less. I'll put in paragraphs. I was the chief neuroscience officer. I was this. I was chief neuromarketing officer. I was with SUNY, UN, SUNY's Scientists Without Borders. I bet you didn't know that about me. I've done stuff. Great to know. Unless it's relevant, unless it really drives what you're offering, don't put it in. Concise, contained, clear. Don't make them go digging. Make it logical and linear, even if you're writing magical fantasies. Hope this is useful. It's cleared my head a bit. Take care. Looking for that stop button again. I should put the mouse right over here.